NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Joe DiBiase and Mike Distefano. I'm from Locked On Sabres. Mike from Locked On Leafs. Mike, how are we doing this fine Tuesday?
Well, before in the game, the Monday Nighter, I have been eliminated from my fantasy football playoff. So not too happy about that. Yeah.
You got a bad beat too, because you would have won had it not been for the first onside kick that I've seen be successful live in it feels like 5 years.
Right? I know, it's great. Well, there was a bunch of successful onside kicks this weekend, oddly enough. It was just kind of that type of weekend, but it was, if that onside kick is unsuccessful, they don't get that extra possession, and LA just kneels it out, and that's ball game. I move on to the playoffs. Instead, this was the final week. It wasn't even the playoffs. It's the fact that I lost because James Conner ended up getting 33 points, and he ended up beating me by 0.3. 0.3, and then the guy who I was tied with for the final playoff spot, he ended up winning his week, so he moves up into the rankings, and I move down out of a playoff position, which sucks because I started off the season at 1-7 and fought my way all the way back into a playoff position. I had my own fate in my hands, and then James Conner killed me single-handedly. So upsetting. So upsetting.
Yeah. He got hurt at the end, too. He got hurt at the end.
You know what? James Robinson getting more than 0.4 points for me would have been nice as well, along with Evan Ingram.
Don't even get me started on the Jaguars. Oh, my God, the Jaguars. I missed the playoffs in a league that came down to a points-4 tiebreaker, and I lost the points-4 tiebreaker on the season, 1,200, 1,300 points in this league, and the only difference was 3 stinking points. And it's a super flex league. So those that are diehard fantasy football fans, you start 2 quarterbacks every week. And because of injuries and people basically it's mostly injuries, I had to start Trevor Lawrence in my super flex spot this week. He gets 1 stinking point at quarterback against the Titans, who, by the way, had allowed the most fantasy points to quarterbacks in the league this year. He gets 1 point. And then, like you said, James Robinson gets 4 yards. Just blow the Jaguars shoot him into the sun right now. Holy cow. Yeah. I'm sure over Locked On NFL and Locked On Jaguars, they're having a field day with that team right now. It might be the most
they're the NHL equivalent of the Arizona Coyotes. Just an absolute gong show, absolute joke of an organization.
But it'd be that if you threw in who would be the NHL equivalent of Urban Meyer?
Oh,
I don't even know. A guy that everyone kind of knows is a joke.
Mike Babcock. No, Babcock. You know who it is? You know who it is? Barry Melrose.
Barry Melrose is good, right? If Barry Melrose was the Coyotes coach right now, that would be good for that. Anyways, we got a lot to get to on today's episode. We're going to talk Olympic participation. We're getting more and more somber every time we talk about this.
Pierre Maguire is
good. Pierre Maguire is good. I keep thinking of him, by the way, for the Montreal GM job. I don't know if we've talked about that a lot.
We haven't. Interesting.
He does speak French, doesn't he?
He's currently an assistant with the Ottawa Senators, so they would have to lure him away from Ottawa. And I don't know if you saw that GIF of the Pierres, but they seem like 2 peas in a pod. I don't know if you want to leave.
Yeah, I mean, but if Pierre Maguire, if the Habs ring him up, and even if it's Jeff Gorton's really calling the shots, but if you're general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, I think Pierre Maguire is jumping for that. But
Probably. That's actually an interesting idea. Now that you think of, now I'm thinking about it, you think of guys who are okay with being a number 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Pierre would be okay with that. He knows that he would have a role and it wouldn't quite be the top dog.
Yeah.
But I think he'd be okay with it because he would still have some say. He would still get to, shake hands, kiss babies, and be kind of the face of a franchise. I feel like that would actually be a decent fit. And he speaks French, like you said. That's not a bad idea. I've also heard that there could be some females, some women involved, which would also be kind of cool.
Let's throw that in. I don't know any names because the story I read or about that the Montreal Canadiens are considering 3 women for their general manager position underneath Jeff Gorton as the president of hockey operations. We had the first woman general manager get hired in the 4 major sports in North America. It was either last year or the year before, down with the Miami Marlins in Major League Baseball. I actually, when I was talking about the Canadiens GM job with Rachel Donner a couple weeks ago on our Friday edition of the show, I threw out whose name did I throw out? Cami Granado. Cami
Yeah.
Granado, who works as a scout in the front office of the Seattle Kraken organization. She has a more expansive role now in the Hockey Hall of Fame because somebody stepped down and she's up on the executive board now. So she's got she knows people in hockey. She's got experience working in front offices. I threw her name out there. I wonder if she would be one of the 3. I didn't see a list of names, but yeah, the Montreal's interviewing 3 women, it looks like.
Yeah, I there was a list of some women out there. I'm just trying to find it really quickly, but there was like a list of some of the top women, some females, some women that have played for like for the national team. Danielle Goyette was one of them, who I think she did some player development stuff with the Maple Leafs, and she's a former Hall of Famer. Her name's been bandied about a little bit. I do believe Caroline Ouellette, also Hall of Famer, has been banded out a little bit. Kim St. Pierre potentially as well. Those are kind of the 3 upper tier names that I had heard. This is just all second. I don't know if any of them have been legitimate candidates or if those are the 3 that they are looking for. But there was a report literally earlier today that suggested that there are 3 that they're thinking about, that are in the mix, in the running for the GM position for the Montreal Canadiens, which would be awesome.
Yeah. I have heard kind of second, third hand here in Buffalo that Danny Briere is he is
Another one.
hopeful.
Yeah.
He's hopeful that he'll get that Montreal GM job. Um and that's if he ends up wanting it. I guess maybe it depends what really is it really just a title? I doubt it.
Well, what's he been
Briere,
doing the last little bit?
he's been working in the Flyers organization. He's been running their ECHL team, the Maine Mariners.
Okay.
That team actually used to. Oh, maybe you know what? Maybe he's not. Maybe they're a Flyers affiliate now, but he just kind of has been running their team in the ECHL, and it was because there's a connection between him and Jeff Gorton, and I think it's that he started running the Maine Mariners when they were an affiliate of the New York Rangers. So he would have been working well below, but would have some tie to Jeff Gorton, who was obviously at the time the GM of the Rangers. So he's just kind of building his way up through the front office ranks. He would never get a GM job, I think, just on timeline alone for where he's at right now. But if he's got the connection to Jeff Gorton, he's got, we know he's bilingual. He's from there, or he's from nearby there, and he's played there. I mean, he's got some experience. There's a lot of ideas here that kind of fit.
Yeah, and it's what they're kind of looking for, right? Like, they're not looking for an alpha male general manager role. They're kind of looking for someone that they can groom and kind of slowly integrate into being the main full-time general manager, right?
They don't want Patrick Waugh.
They
don't want Patrick Waugh. That's like throwing a grenade into the front office because that guy, he'll be like, "Oh yeah, cool. I'm just here to grow and learn and whatnot." And then a month in, he's sharpening his knife, just getting ready to for the power siege that'll come at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got other things, by the way, we're going to get to today. We're going to preview what's coming up on our Locked On NHL Power Rankings that are coming out on Wednesday, tomorrow. We're going to kind of preview who we think's moving up, who we think's moving down, and then we'll look at the divisional futures at BetOnline for the Eastern Conference in both the Atlantic and the Metropolitan. Just kind of look through the playoff race as a whole right now, because it might not be the most interesting one down the stretch, but we'll talk about that later. Let's start with Olympic participation. There's more and more skepticism that this is going to happen. There are COVID breakouts all over the league. The Hurricanes have one now. Seth Jarvis, actually one of their top young players who is in COVID protocol. It came out today, not that he was probably going to go anyway, but that Team Canada for the World Juniors said that now he's ineligible to come because he tested positive for COVID within 2 weeks of the World Junior tournament, or within 3 weeks, whatever it is. So, they're one team that's having this right now. There have been a total of 123 players that have entered COVID protocol this season. That is 17% of the league. It's just Andy Strickland today. Did you see his tweet? Andy Strickland, he tweeted, and he's a guy who's pretty plugged in. He said, if NHL players are required to quarantine for 3 to 5 weeks in Beijing at the 2022 Olympics, there's no chance NHL players will be participating. Some serious adjustments must be made to these guidelines. That is, by the way, if someone tests positive while they're there, they are stuck for 3 to 5 weeks. So all of this is kind of coming to a head and making us believe that they're not going.
They're not going. It's not happening. I want it to happen. I know how badly you want it to happen. This isn't the year. It's not the time. It's not going to happen. I don't know where you stand on it. I've been feeling this way for a couple of weeks now, honestly. And then Leonard came out about a week or so ago, and he said that he pulled out of the Olympic bid for his mental health. And it got me thinking, like, I guarantee you there are going to be others who feel the same way. Did you happen to see at what Alex Pietrangelo said, his comments about not going? So basically he said, like, yeah, I've got 4 young kids and like I've got to think real hard and long if I want to go over there. And if I happen to test positive, that's 5 weeks I'm away from my family. Like he may not want to take that risk. And I'm sure he's not the only one. And Carlo Koliakovo, a former NHLer, a buddy of mine at work up here at TSN, he said he's spoken to, and he's also close buddies with Petro, but he's spoken with a few different NHLers, and Pietrangelo is not the only one that feels that way. And apparently it's starting to, the NHL, the players themselves are starting to kind of flip on the idea of going to the playoffs, and they may, or going to the Olympics, and they may not want to go either due to these new restrictions that they found out about. And these are governmental restrictions. These aren't restrictions by the IOC or the NHL. And have you tried negotiating with China lately? Yeah, it doesn't happen. Right? Yeah. So I don't know if you're going to be able to negotiate restrictions. And if there's a 3 to 5 week timeline on quarantine, if you happen to test positive, I don't know if the players who apparently have the final say at this point, according to Gary Bettman at the Board of Governors, if they're going to give the final send-off, they may decide themselves, like, just not worth it. Not this year. Maybe in 2026.
I was surprised by that, by the way, that Bettman said, like, it's in the players' hands. Like, I'm surprised he didn't just say, all right, enough's enough. Like,
I think because he knows what's going on, and now he doesn't look like the bad guy that has to cancel it. Now the players are going to make the decision themselves.
So you wonder if the players say, you know what, we're going to go anyway. Bettman might step in like a couple weeks from now and be like, okay, we're actually going to step in.
I don't think
it'll get to that anyway.
It's not that I think that he has dead set about not going. Like, he doesn't want to go. I think they basically came out and said that at the Board of Governors. But I think he's of the belief that enough players are considering pulling the plug that now he doesn't have to look like the bad guy. He can say all the right things, and he feels pretty confident that the players and the PA are going to opt out themselves, so he doesn't have to be the bad guy in this whole situation. That's what I think his comments, kind of reading between the lines, that's kind of what it seems like, or what it seemed like over the weekend.
So we should find out officially probably this week what the PA and the players are going to end up doing, because this is the week where the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, will be sending out the guidelines, the handbook for athletes that are going, what the Olympic Village is going to look like, what protocols are going to be like in the Olympic Village. And supposedly, from the article I was reading on this earlier, supposedly China is going to have an answer of whether or not that 3 to 5 week quarantine period does apply to the Olympic athletes as well. I think the assumption at this point is that it does, because it's a government mandate, not just an Olympic mandate. But they don't know that 100%, so they're getting more clarification on that. And if that does come back with, yes, if you test positive, it's 3 to 5 weeks, then I don't think there's any way in hell that they're not going. The money part of it is an effect there as well. I know none of these guys want to be stuck in China for 3 to 5 weeks and miss a month of the season. But the NHL has said from before the season that they are not covering player salaries for guys that are missing time due to quarantine. Like that is in the language of the revised CBA. So let's say you named Alex Pietrangelo earlier. Let's say Alex Pietrangelo goes over for Team Canada during the semifinal or the final, like the last week they're there. He tests positive for COVID. Now he's in China for 5 weeks, and suddenly he misses a month of hockey, a month away from his family, and that's a big chunk of change that he's going to be missing out on as well. There is the one thing though. There is that the international was the IOC or the IHF. Let me look. I have in front of me IHF. They have a $5 million fund to reimburse any players that may happen to. So that should be okay, but we don't know what happens.
That will dry up so quickly, though. Like, that'll dry up so quickly.
Right, and then what happens?
If one player gets it, that thing's going to spread through the whole team, especially with this new Omicron variant, which apparently is a massive spreader. Yep. One guy gets in a locker room, it's spreading. And a lot of these cases that are happening right now within the NHL apparently are a lot of these Omicron variants, which is spreading heavily. Like yesterday, we saw the Calgary Flames and the Chicago Blackhawks. They had to postpone their game because Calgary postponed it. Like they just didn't fly to America because they were worried that if they flew over to America and then they had more positive cases because there were some people entering protocol on the Sunday, if they would have flown and then they found more positive tests, they would have all had to stay in the U.S. and quarantine the U.S. So they just didn't fly. And then ultimately they decided to just postpone the next couple of games in Chicago, Nashville, and then also Toronto's supposed to play there on Thursday, which has also been postponed. So even if you look at the postponements, this is now 3 teams that has had to postpone games: the Ottawa Senators, the New York Islanders, and now you get the Calgary Flames. You've got a bunch of other teams and a bunch of other players entering all these COVID protocols. I don't know if you saw in the NFL today the amount of players that entered COVID protocol, but I think it's because now the testing has ramped up. Whereas before, if you were double vaccinated, I don't know if you still had to subject to daily testing. Where now I believe they're kind of getting back into it as these cases start to rise in North America. And that's why we're seeing a lot more positive cases kind of come out, where a lot of maybe asymptomatic ones weren't. I don't know this for a fact, but this is just something that I've been pondering. Maybe that's why we've seen a big spike in cases today specifically, especially in the NFL and in the NHL. But at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to go. I don't think it works for anybody. Financially, it doesn't make sense for health, for safety, for anyone. So I'm out, man. I'm out. I'll be shocked if we see the NHLers there. You know who apparently is the one guy who is trying to draw his line in the sand and really wants to go. You know who that is?
I'm guessing it's a Russian player.
Sidney Crosby.
Really?
Apparently, Sidney Crosby is the guy who is at the head of the table at the PA, really trying to keep this thing intact, because I think he knows deep down this could be his final attempt at a gold medal, and sees it kind of slipping through his fingers, and he's trying, man. He wants to go, I guess. And I think there's a lot of other players who do not want to at this point in time.
That could be important. I mean, we see this more in other sports, like the big star players being influential on others in the league. This happens in the NBA a lot with like LeBron James. But think about it, if at the PA meetings or whatnot, and like Crosby, and I'll throw in Ovechkin for this, if they're up there banging the drum for we should still be going, and like I'm going no matter what, because Ovechkin, remember the last time he threatened the Capitals in the NHL that I know we're not going, but I'm going anyway. Like, I'll take the suspension. He didn't end up doing it, but there was talk of him being like, all right, I'm just going to go. Like, screw what the NHL says. I'm going. Yeah. I'm going to win a gold medal. And he didn't end up doing it. But then Emily Kaplan actually tweeted yesterday morning, NHL players having calls with players this week to gauge Olympic interest. It's going to be hard to get a consensus. A player explains his locker room dynamic, quote, I want to go no matter what. The Russians are going no matter what. But 2 guys already told their federations that they're iffy. Just pick out that one quote in there. A player in the league said the Russians are going no matter what. The gold medals, the gold medal, and for some of those guys, I don't think Ovechkin. I don't think Ovechkin, but some of those guys, it matters more than the Stanley Cup,
Yeah.
and like that can be offensive when you're thinking about like the NHL. But I wonder what happens if there's a split. If like half the players want to go and half don't, do they send some? I mean, maybe. I don't
I
know.
yeah, I don't know. Like they're gonna have to go to a vote, right? Like the PA is gonna have to vote on this.
That's what I'm wondering. Is it all or nothing?
Yeah, I don't know that question. That's a good question. I'm
I
actually
don't know either.
speaking with Darren Dreger tomorrow. I'm gonna ask him that question.
All right,
I'm
good.
going to ask him that on my show tomorrow.
We accomplished something in this
Yeah,
chat.
and we'll get back to the people with that answer because that's a good question. Like,
Yeah.
is it an all or nothing? Like, what if some guys don't want to go and some guys do? Are they going to have to? Because the other issue too is these long lists. Those are the only players who are eligible. So,
Mhm.
like, what if half of the people on the long list don't want to go? Are you gonna take the other half, knowing that it's like a subpar team? Like, to me, I feel like the biggest issue that players have, it's not guys like Matthews and Marner and McDavid. It's the guys like Petrangelo, the guys who have families. I think have the biggest issue. Tavares today, in practice, spoke about how
Mhm.
questionable he is now and how it's not as much of a given that he would go to the Olympics if given the opportunity. Now he's second guessing it and has to really think about it. He needs more information before making that decision. And I feel like we're going to get to a point where it's going to be a lot of family guys, a lot of the older players who have established families that may be the ones who are kind of driving the narrative to pull out. And then the young kids who are going to want to stick around and go and play because, well, they don't have kids that they are going to miss for a couple of weeks. So it's not really that big of a deal to them.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. We got 26 days. January 10th is the final day that the NHL can pull out of the Beijing Olympics. Trending towards that happening, but we don't know officially just yet. All right, we'll take a timeout now. We'll get into some league stuff when we come back, including our Locked On NHL power rankings, who we think is going to move up and move down, and we'll look at some divisional futures as well as the playoff picture in both the Eastern Conference divisions, the Metro and the Atlantic. Before we do that, though, holidays are right around the corner, and finding the perfect gift is tricky. Omaha Steaks makes it easy to send friends and family an unforgettable gift guaranteed to be loved. Go to omahasteaks.com and enter NHL into the search bar to order the perfect gift package for $99.99. You'll get 24 entrees like the world famous bacon wrapped filet mignons, chicken breasts, sides, desserts, and so much more when you use the code NHL. You'll also get an additional 8 Omaha Steak burgers for free with your order. We've all heard the reports about shortages and shipping delays. Don't wait. Order the perfect gift package today at omahasteaks.com. You get 8 free burgers when you use the promo code NHL. Achieve gifting greatness with Omaha Steaks. Incredible flavor, incredible value, and 100% guaranteed. omahasteaks.com, keyword NHL. Joe DiBiase and Mike Distefano here on the Locked On NHL podcast. Wednesday, which is tomorrow, will be the unveiling of our next NHL power rankings. We've got the power rankings up in front of us. In fact, I can, because technology these days, if you're watching us on YouTube, by the way, you can watch us on YouTube. Should have mentioned that at the top of the show. Our Locked On NHL YouTube page if you want. We're going to kind of go through our...
We have last week's rankings.
We have last week's rankings. We're going to
Right.
tell you we think is going to move up and who we think is going to move down. So, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with your Leafs right up at number 2? They've been struggling a
Well,
little bit, it sounds like.
yeah, they have, and they're moving down. They're moving down. They're moving down my list. They should move down everybody's list. The last little bit since Mitch Marner went out, this team struggled. Their penalty killing has been atrocious. They've allowed like 8 goals on the penalty kill over the last little bit. I think in like 8 goals, like 5 games. It's not great, not great. And like they've allowed 4 or more goals in 4 or 5 straight, or three or more goals in 4 or 5 straight games. They're just not playing tight defensively. Things are starting to come unglued at the seams a little bit here for the Maple Leafs. So it's just I think they're just hitting a bit of a rut, hitting that time of year. They went on a hot stretch and they've played a lot of hockey. They've got Marner out with an injury. They've got Sandin out with an injury. They've got a suspension to Jason Spezza. And then Travis Dermott has missed the last couple of games as well. So, some injuries starting to pile up. They're starting to filter in some non-NHL guys. And, they picked up a couple of wins, but they've also haven't played great while doing so. So I would anticipate the Leafs to fall a couple of spots down in our rankings tomorrow.
Obviously, I think the Oilers will fall from number 9. They've lost 5 straight games.
Yep.
They now sit tied with the Vegas Golden Knights after the Knights had a very slow start to the year at 32 points for third place in the Pacific Division. And there's San Jose hanging around just 1 point back of both of them. So the Oilers will drop. They're such a one-line team. It's like McDavid and Draisaitl have one off game and they got no shot.
Yeah, and now Hyman's day to day. We'll see how long he's going to be out for. But yeah, I know the team really ride and die. They're ride or die with McDavid and Draisaitl, and really that power play. If that power play isn't operating at the 40% rate that they were, the team's not winning as many games. And Draisaitl, although he's at the top of the list when it comes to the Rocket Richard Trophy, he's shooting at like 25%. It's not sustainable. I think we all expected this guy's numbers to kind of regress at some point. He would hit a bit of a lull. But although he's still, scoring and getting points, he's not scoring at that ridiculous 200-point rate that he was earlier in the year. And if he's not scoring 2 or 3 points a game, McDavid's not, this team's not winning. And 5 in a row, taking the L. So, yeah, I think this team will most definitely drop out of the top 10 here.
Did you see the stat that I want to pull it up just to make sure this is the exact number? But I think it's that in his last 82 games, going back to last season, McDavid has 150 points.
Nice.
I mean, I think he's on pace for something like 140 this year. He's incredible, but the team itself overall, a little lacking. The Avalanche will move into the top 10, I think. They, according to the NHL, they put this out in one of their press releases the other day, that the Avalanche this season, they're on a 4-game win streak, by the way. They have scored the 4th most goals by any NHL team in history in the first 25 games of the season. They are already at 109 goals scored this year in 25 games. They sit 4th in their division, but they're starting to come back to being one of those dominant teams in the West that we're accustomed to. So they'll be top 10. How far up do you think Pittsburgh goes? So they're on a win streak right now themselves. I think 4, right? They've won, 4 in a row, 7 of their last 10. They're at 33 points on the year. Crosby's back and looks back to form. He's up to a point a game player again after a little bit of a slow start after the first couple games coming back from injury. They're currently at 16. So tomorrow when these come out, how high do you think they go? Do you think they get into the top 10?
All right, let's play this game again, okay? So I don't see them. Okay, Panthers, no. Leafs, no. Caps, no. Canes, no. Wild, no. I think they could sneak. I could see the Flames and Oilers both moving out of the top 10. Like, we're looking at the top 10 list up here on YouTube. And the Flames at 8th, the Oilers at 9th. I could see both of them moving out of the top 10. And that means that 2 teams will rise in. I do believe that Pittsburgh are going to be one of those teams that rise. They've played extremely well. Tristan Jarry has been unbelievable this season, the goaltender there for the Pens. And like you said, Crosby's, he's back to being Sidney Crosby. Jake Gensel, I think, got hurt though, so that's gonna suck for them going forward. But he was on a tear before he got injured. And they still got to even get like Gino back. Like, they're doing all this without Gino Malkin. Imagine he comes back. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they just don't go away. They just don't go away, do they, Joe?
No, they don't. They call up some rando guy from Wilkes-Barre Scranton. He scores, he scores on a 20-goal pace, and they're fine. They just keep cruising along. Anyone else stick out below the Penguins on this list to you that you think will be on the move? I know before we got rolling on the show here today, we mentioned the Canucks will move up because they've been winning since they made their organizational changes.
Bruce, there it is. You been hearing those? You been hearing those?
No, what is that?
So Bruce Boudreau, right, took over
Bruce,
for
right,
Vancouver. So after during his first win, right, their first game last weekend or whatever, last Monday, it was a shutout victory, 4-0 shutout against the Kings. And with 5 minutes left in the game, it was pretty much in the bag, sealed up. And the fans started chanting, "Bruce, there it is. Bruce, there it is." Apparently, he's not so fond of it, though.
Jesus.
He threw a jab at one of his press conferences yesterday, being like, "Yeah, I would really rather them not say that. I hate that stupid chant, but hey, I love it. Bruce, there it is." And if the team keeps winning, dude, who cares what the hell they say? Just keep winning, keep getting butts in the seats, and allow the Canucks to move up the power rankings. I think that they move up a couple of spots. Not too much, but I do see them moving up. The one other team that I could see moving up, we have the Nashville Predators sitting at 18th
Yep.
from our from last year. From last week, I see them moving up quite a bit themselves. They're on a 5-game winning streak and currently sit 10th in the NHL right now with 35 total points, which is good for, I believe, also 10th, maybe 11th in points percentage. But
Yeah.
I think Nashville is definitely a top half team at this point. They're a team that has certainly surprised me. They're going to move up from 18, absolutely.
I wonder how real they are because they lead the league with 10 one-score wins this season. Their goal differential is only +6 for their record. I mean, look at Minnesota, who's just above them in the standings. They're at +24. Below them, St. Louis +17, Colorado they're 25. They're still surprising me. But by season's end, I think Colorado passes them. I think they'll be right there with St. Louis. I don't think St. Louis has to pass them. So I kind of agree. They're at 18 now. I think when I do them this morning, I'll probably put them at 14, 15, 16, a couple spots, but I don't think I'm going crazy with them.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I would put them over. Put them over the Stars, the Jets, and the Bruins. So I would move them up 3 spots from 18 to, I guess that would be 15, 14, 15. Yeah. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Yossi is so good. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the league. Mikael Granlund also is having a big year, 27 points in 28 games.
Yeah. Duchesne having a renaissance year himself as well.
Yeah. They're the Renaissance team. They got guys that disappeared for a year or two that are just hey, look, I'm good again. The one guy they can't get going on that, although is he playing right now? What's Ryan Johansen doing? Maybe he's not even.
He had a good start to the year as well. I don't think he's quite point per game, but I think he's hovering around 20 points or so on the year. He did pretty good to start the season. I haven't checked his stats probably in a couple of weeks, but he was hovering.
There he is. Yeah, I don't know why I don't know why he wasn't on the list I was looking at, but 24 points in 27 games. So he's producing for them as well. All right, let's take another time out here and we'll talk about what's going on divisionally and what's going on with the playoff races in the East, the Metro and the Atlantic. When we return, first, you listen to podcasts for the power of knowledge. You switch to Boost Mobile for the power of saving money. Get 3 unlimited data lines for $30 a month per line and a free 5G phone when you switch. So you can get the latest episodes all on one of America's largest 5G networks. More power to save. Boost Mobile. Disclaimer, free phone limited to new customers and 1 per line. Additional restrictions apply. Offers coverage not available everywhere or for all phones networks. See boostmobile.com for details. This episode is also brought to you by Stance. Founded in 2009, Stance Apparel represents a radical reinvention of socks, underwear, active apparel with a sharp focus on comfort, quality, and creativity. Stance brings an atypical aesthetic alongside some of pop culture's hottest collaborators for the ultimate in style and self-expression, because everything you wear should be a direct extension of who you are and how you feel. Stance believes that the perfect fit matters more than fitting in, that those who feel good do good. So go see for yourself. Register for an account at stance.com and get 15% off your first purchase. Use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to apply and enjoy the color and comfort of a life less ordinary with Stance. Joe DiBiase and Mike Distefano here on the Locked On NHL podcast. I'm at Sneaky Joe Sports on Twitter. Mike is at Mickey_Canuck. BetOnline.ag, one of our partners here at the Locked On Podcast Network. they've got divisional futures up for both the Atlantic and the Metro. So let's find out what our best bets are, what our favorite bet is here. Because if we were just going to pick straight up, I think we might go with the favorites. But how about with the odds? What's your favorite bet? Let's start in the Atlantic. The Panthers, unsurprisingly, are the favorite at plus 160, but not by a wide margin. Toronto is there at plus 210. The Tampa Bay Lightning are in third at plus 220. And then you've got the Boston Bruins at plus 1,000. Don't really need, I'll put it up on our YouTube stream so you can see the entire odds. Don't really need to go further than that because I don't think the Red Wings, the Sabres, the Senators, or the Canadiens have any shot in hell. So of those top 4 teams, what's your favorite bet if you had to make one on who wins the Atlantic?
My value bet, and we're going like value bet, correct?
Value bet, yes.
Yeah, if it's the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, you're talking about the defending Cup champions. You can get them at plus 220, the third best favorited odds to win this division. I think they could easily win this division. I pegged them as the division winners at the beginning of the season. They're only 2 points out of doing that. And like you look at the Florida Panthers, they're 14-1 at home. 14-1 at home this year. I don't think that home record is going to stand, and they're going to be basically unbeatable, which means that they're going to start losing some games. And Tampa Bay, look at all the injuries that they've sustained. They don't have Kucherov. They don't have Point. They don't have Cirelli. And guess what? They're winning games. The second they get those guys back, and they're all scheduled to come back at some point. They are scheduled to return to the roster. We're not talking about Kucherov, who took the whole season last year. Once they return, it's going to be a scary club down the stretch because they're going to be rested, realistically. They'll be nice and rested, and I think that they'll go on a big run here and end up finishing as the division champ. So not only are they my favorite, actually, at this point in time, but also the best bang for your buck, the best value bet over at betonline.ag.
To me, it would be between Toronto and Tampa. I'd want to go with a little bit of a boost in the odds from going with Florida with plus 160. I think I might agree with you that I would go Tampa, but the Leafs would be close for me just because of the amount of chances they generate. How great Jack Campbell has been this year, too.
Don't do it, Bill. Don't do it. They'll disappoint you just like they do to Leafs Nation
each
and every year.
Hold on. They'll disappoint me when the playoffs come. This is the division. They could do that, right? They could do that. They just gotta. They can't even do that. All right.
They might be able to. Don't get me wrong. They might be able to. Like what they showed you in the month of November, absolutely. What they've shown me in the month of December, that's not a division winner. So we'll see what they are. I'm sure it's somewhere in between, but is that in between a better team than the Tampa Bay Lightning? I'm not so sure.
Do you think Boston has a run in them? They're 10 points out of the division lead, but they got 5 games in hand on Toronto. Yeah. They got 3 games in hand on both Tampa and Florida. They'd have to win like all their games in hand to be even with them. So I don't know. Do you think I think they probably don't have they're a one-line team. They're such a one-line team this year. They're really missing David Krejci. The goaltending behind with replacing Tuukka Rask. Allmark's been pretty good, but he hasn't been great. Jeremy Swayman, kind of same thing. He's been okay, but he hasn't been great.
So your future is not going to pay off for you don't think, huh?
No, I don't think so. He doesn't even start enough games for that to happen. They like split time 50-50, which I guess I should have. I know. I should have seen that coming.
Plus Tuukka's going to come back at some point.
Yeah, you think that happens? I think it probably does.
Yeah.
What happens though?
Absolutely.
Does Swayman go down 100%. To the AHL? Allmark's getting paid. They can't put him anywhere.
Yeah, probably Swayman, to be honest. I think he's still two-way eligible. I don't think he requires waivers to be sent down, so I could see it.
Allmark, by the way, is at a .921 save percentage. He actually has been good when he's in there, but again, like you said, this is the part of the reason not to bet him. Is he going to get enough workload? He started 11 games this year. Swayman has started 13, and they have the identical save percentages. Identical. So, how about in the Metropolitan Division? The Carolina Hurricanes are the favorite at plus 175 at BetOnline. The Washington Capitals very close behind at plus 180, basically identical. Then you've got the New York Rangers at plus 325, the Pittsburgh Penguins at 800, and then a large drop to the Blue Jackets at plus 5,500. So again, kind of like the Atlantic, it's 4 teams that are in it and 4 teams that really are not.
For this one, I think I'm sticking with the favorite. I like the Carolina Hurricanes to roll here. I think they're one of the best teams in the NHL. They're balanced. They're star-studded. They've got a decent goaltender who can win them games. They've got an unreal blue line, and they've got superstars who could score. Truly a balanced team that has tremendous depth, and I think they're one of the best in the NHL. So I think that's probably the team that I like to place my money on to win this division at the end of the day.
I would go with them too. I think
Yeah.
Washington, they're playing a little bit above their weight right now. I think the Rangers are
Well,
going to
and they're an older team, right? Like this is a
they're older.
team that the Washington Capitals could fade towards the end of the year. Like I
Yes.
don't know if we're like if is Ovi going to keep up this pace all season long, and he's the one who's willing them to this
Yeah.
type of heights. Is he really going to average like 1.7 points per game the entire season? Probably not. He's never done that ever. You think he's going to start doing this at age 35? I don't think so. I think it'll regress. And but nothing says that Carolina's going to slow down. So I like the Hurricanes a lot here. And we already know you're not a big fan of what the Rangers have been doing. You think it's a lot of
No.
luck. So we know you're not betting on the
I
Rangers.
I watched the Buffalo Sabres, who have been playing like trash for 3 weeks, just run them up and down the ice on Friday night. And the Rangers, like again, like maybe this is just them. Like they just keep they keep getting the result. The Friday night game against Buffalo, the Sabres actually tied the game late, and it was onside, but they reviewed it and called it offside. That the league actually it was so blatantly wrong that the NHL did something that you never see them do. Like Colin Campbell put out a statement the next day that they called the Rangers, they called the Sabres, and they told both teams that this goal should have counted. When does the NHL ever admit wrongdoing and something like that? So the Rangers, like
Yeah.
that's just kind of it's only one game, but it's just kind of a microcosm to me of their season that they're getting away with it. But Shesterkin has been
It's such a
so
random thing to bring up. Like, why would you? What is that going to accomplish? Like, oh, we made a mistake. We're not going to rectify
yeah.
it. But like, a
I
mistake was made.
See, I think them going public with that means to me that they probably have sent either a memo or a video around to officials in the league that like, hey, don't make this like replay officials even don't make this mistake. It's not when the player crosses into the offensive zone, it's when he touches the puck. He doesn't have possession yet. You can't call that. But anyways, you're right. It is a little weird that they even felt the need to do it.
Also,
Ovechkin,
you want to
sorry, go
talk
ahead.
about? Well, I'm just saying you want to talk about luck. Just took a look at the PDO really quickly because I was curious to see if the Rangers had one of the highest PDOs in the league. They do at 8, but the Capitals actually have the highest PDO in the league, which would make sense if you
Wow.
actually think about it with the way that team is playing, the rate that they're scoring goals, and they're getting unreal goaltending to boot from both their goalies. So that would make a lot of sense. But yeah, the Caps actually leading the league with within PDO category. Tampa second, Carolina third, and Minnesota at fourth. You have to go all the way down to the Rangers at eighth. So they may not be as lucky as you thought. Just
Wow.
saying. Yeah.
That's surprising. I'm surprised the Capitals even number one. I would have thought that they were high on that, but not that they were that high. Ovechkin, by the way, is on pace for 128 points and 58 goals. I mean, I love Ovi, but he
Uh,
is not getting to 128 points.
Do you want one more stat that'll make you so happy as a New York Rangers hater?
Sure, yes, I would love one.
Their expected goals for percentage currently 26th in the league at
Oh my
47.3%.
You are speaking to my heart right now. I mean, holy cow! Can I
Dude,
bet?
the
Can I just bet
Sabres,
against the
Sabres,
Rangers?
the Sabres have a better expected goals for percentage than the New York Rangers.
Unbelievable,
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah,
You know what? If I'm going deep value, if actually my second favorite bet in the Metro after Carolina is Pittsburgh at plus 800.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I
they
can
got to
see
climb
that.
out of a little hole here, but
I mean, they get a cooking once Gino gets back.
yeah,
Possible. They bring Phil back from the desert. Yeah, nice little deadline acquisition. I mean,
Yeah.
Brian Burke loves himself some Philly, right?
Yes,
Loves himself some Phil Kessel.
yeah.
Why not?
Kind of, if you can kind of see us hinting at it, or you can even just read it yourself by what we're talking about in the lines here, where both divisions, the Atlantic and the Metro, it's 4 teams that are kind of in the running and then 4 teams that are not. that's represented in the wild card race. So, Mike, the top teams currently in terms of point percentage outside of the playoff picture right now, the Penguins and the Bruins hold the 2 wild card spots. Just outside of them, Columbus, Detroit, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Buffalo. Does anyone think any of those teams are playoff teams? Like there might not be much of a race.
No, and it's funny you stopped at the Islanders, but this is the year where finally
Oh,
we were
right.
right that they are a sham.
It took us 2 years.
But finally they are a sham. Dude, they lost 10 in a row. Brutal. Brutal, brutal, brutal. But no, to answer your question, honestly, the teams that are there, those 8 teams, Washington, Carolina, New York, Florida, Toronto, Tampa, Pittsburgh, Boston, I think those are going to be the 8 teams that are in the playoffs, barring injury, of course. Always need to, with that little asterisk, but barring any major injuries to these teams, to like these goaltenders, yeah, I think this is going to be the 8 teams that make up the Eastern Conference playoffs. We're not even at Christmas, and it honestly feels that way. Columbus is right there. They're right there with Pittsburgh and with Boston in a points perspective with 29 points, Boston just 30. But Boston has 2 games in hand, and the points percentage 625 to
Yeah.
558. So, it's not as close as maybe it looks like if you just look at it based on the points. So I really do. I'm with you, man. I think this race, clearly something could happen. We've seen teams come from out of nowhere. Philly's made this coaching change. They've gone on. They've now won 2 in a row. Maybe they're going to go on a big run here and maybe make a run at this thing. But if I had to put some money down on, to make the playoffs or to not make the playoffs, these 8 teams currently in a playoff position are the ones that I'm betting yes on. And the ones who are not, I'd be betting no.
If someone makes it that's not in currently, would it be Columbus for you?
Actually, honestly, like, am I weird to say Detroit or New Jersey?
No, I can see it. They have more firepower up front.
Like, I just think Columbus, I don't know. They just don't have anything. Like, I don't know how the hell they're doing this, to be honest. How
And
they're an above 500 team.
and what's
Makes no sense
amazing
to
is
me.
they score. Like they've scored 86 goals on the season. That's more than Carolina. It's more than the Rangers. I think it's 5th in the conference. It's 5th in
Yeah,
the conference.
they've also given up 86.
Right, like, and when you imagine, like, when you think of, like, their roster, you would think, all right, if they're hanging around in the playoff race, how are they doing it? They're probably doing it winning games 2-1. But no, they're just
Yeah.
kind of, like, flying up and down the ice, weirdly, because, again, they don't have any star power.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's bizarre, which leads me to believe that I think that it's gonna fall apart for them, right? Like I
Yeah.
that's what I believe. Let's see where they are when it comes to expected goals for percentage. Oh, look at that. They're 1 behind the New York Rangers in 27th in the league in expected goals. So probably some regression there.
You still
Gonna
have
say there's probably some regression there.
you still got PDO in front of you? Do you
I
know?
do.
I can look it up real quick too.
I do. I do.
What are they in that?
PDO, they are currently 19th, actually. They
Okay,
are
so not a lot.
0.998, so
All
they're
right.
basically exactly what they should be,
Mhm.
which is confusing, actually, when you look at their goals for, but anyway.
They are who we thought they were, or
They are
they're who the stats thought they were.
yeah, I
I guess.
suppose. I think they're gonna regress, though, like,
Yeah.
they're not a team and saying, "Yep, that's definitely going to be in the playoff hunt the rest of the way." No, I think if there's one team that makes a run at the wild card, it's going to be either Detroit or New Jersey. I don't have much faith in Philly because I think they should tear it down. To be honest
Mm,
with you,
me
so
too.
Detroit and Philly are kind of the two, or Detroit and New Jersey might be the 2 teams who could make a push here, but it's unlikely in my opinion.
All right, well, that's going to wrap it for today's episode. A bit of news. This is actually going to be, at least for the time being, my final Tuesday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Schedule is just getting super busy. The radio station I work for here in Buffalo, WGR, has been putting more and more on my plate. So just to be able to focus and make sure I'm not half-assing it with Locked On Sabres. I just need to take something off my plate. So the show is going to obviously continue. We don't know what the future's going to hold yet, but like Mike, it's been a pleasure doing the show with you for the last 2 years. And this is not really a goodbye for us. It's a goodbye for us doing this show, but we're gonna talk plenty. We'll do some more Sabres and Leafs crossovers, I'm sure, every time they play. I'm heading up to Hamilton in a couple months. Maybe we'll meet up there. But yeah, it's been a pleasure doing the show with you for the last 2 years.
You too, buddy. It's been a fun time. I hope the listeners had just as much fun listening to us as we had just sitting here chatting hockey. I look forward to these Tuesday chats each and every week. And it sucks that we're not going to be able to do them on a weekly basis here on Locked On NHL. But obviously, we'll be chatting, and I'm sure we'll get in your ear at some point. You'll make another appearance here on the national show.
Oh yeah, I'm not gone forever. I can tell you that. And I will be back on Friday's edition of this week with Rachel Donner, and we'll hand the reins off to somebody else going forward. All right, so thanks everybody for listening to today's show. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Sneaky Joe Sports. Mike is at Mickey_Canuck. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Now go make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms.
Also, Locked On Leafs and Locked On Sabres.
Yes.